like it always does. We'll get started with this crazy show in just one moment. Bear with us. Mark is there. Hi, Mark. Sorry about the delay on this. How far are we behind? Oh, only a couple of minutes. Hope you're having a good Friday. Finally Friday, right? With so much to talk about. I know there's a lot of things you want us to talk about. So we'll do that, huh? How about we do that? Come on, bumper music. Time for you to end. Like 16 seconds. We're tired of you already. Finally, Friday is being brought to you this week by Major Spoilers, VIP, and Patreon members from around the world. Show your support. Keep this show going. Solve all our tech issues when you become a patron at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Oh, I hate Fridays, and I hate technology. No, finally Friday is here. And joining us from a janky thing that I have just set up. Oh, wait a minute. It's Ashley V. Robinson.
Hello.
Oh, and I can't.
All right.
Oh, let's see what's going on here. Okay, so we're just gonna. This is all messed up. So anyway, there's Ashley. Let's try that again, Ashley.
Hi. Hello.
There you are.
Hi.
Oh, hey, how you doing?
So good. How are you?
You've been busy these last couple of weeks doing some Shakespeare.
I have. I am currently in Artshare LA's production of Macbeth, playing
Nice.
one of the witches, and we have very short rehearsal process. And then now we're open. We're open until September 7th. Please come see us Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights at 8 p.m. And yeah, it's been really, really wonderful.
Well, that's
but
good.
Also, it's taken me away all of my evenings.
Oh, I know. That's why Ashley hasn't been on the Major Spoilers podcast in a while. And why we have been skipping you on some Fridays recently, too, because you've had some auditions for some cool things that we hope come through.
Yes.
So it's always cool. It's always cool when you're not. No, don't take. This is going to come out wrong. It's okay when you're not here because you're out doing other awesome things.
Yes, I know what you mean by that. And thank you for saying so.
Yeah. So it has been a crazy week. It is the first week back to school for everybody. First full week back to school. And I have just been doing a lot of running around. I'm pretty worn out by today. I teach a class on Fridays that runs 3 hours until about 12:30. And then I went and had some lunch with some people. And then I rushed here. And maybe if we have time today, I don't know if we'll have time. I found a soaking wet package on my front step. So maybe we'll open that a little bit. Yeah, and the nice thing about it is it's a piece of electronics. You can tell because it's got the battery warning on the back, and it's soaked. So we'll see how this goes. Malone is in the chat. Wayward Boy is in the chat. Mark Smith is in the chat. Thank you, whoever was following us just a moment ago. And I think we have a lot to talk about in this half hour beyond just kids going back to school and university back in process. Did you enjoy your university time, Ashley?
I loved university.
Truly, what's the best part about university?
So much. You don't quite have to live in the real world.
Well, okay, yes, I can see that. That's true.
I was very good at school. So for me, university is like school on steroids. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I always really, really loved it.
Cool. And I enjoy the university setting as well. I think it's a great place for kids to grow and develop. And also I appreciate the fact that kids go to school all day and I don't have to take care of them. So
yeah, truly.
You got that as well. Let's start with the big elephant in the room. We talked a little bit about this this week on the Major Spoilers pre-show. For those of you who download that and who are one of our patrons, thank you so much for that. But this week, bombshell for nerds around the world when Disney and Sony decided that they couldn't play well with one another, and Sony said, well, we're going to take our licensed property and go home, and Disney's like, well, we're going to ruin you on the social internets. What's going on with this story, Ashley? So basically, Disney said, hey, we would like some more money. We're going to even up our amount of money that we give you to make these movies, but we would like a little bit more money, and Sony said no. And Disney said, well, fine. And now no more Spider-Man in the MCU. Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
It's infinitely more complicated than that, right? And everyone... Not everyone, but I think an inappropriate amount of people are like, let's boycott Sony, which in
Which
my
is the part
estimation,
that
is
just doesn't
not-
make any sense.
Yeah, is not the reading to be taking on this because we don't officially know all the terms that were asked for, of course.
Right.
We know a little bit here, a little bit there. And what basically the big thing that Disney wanted was they wanted 50-50.
So did they want 50-50, or were they coming to the table and saying, hey, we will cover 50% of the production cost if you give us more on the back end?
Nah, they were saying, hey, anything with Spider-Man in it, we get 50-50. And they were saying whether we make it or not, whether we produce it or not, whether it's Spider-Man or Spider-Man adjacent character, Venom, Miles, Silk, Gwen, anyone, we're going to take 50%.
What?
And they did ask for a couple other things as well, including the right to use any Spider-Man adjacent character in their own movies without paying an additional licensing fee. And Sony basically said, hey, we're like one of 3 independent studios, which is hilarious because obviously it's still a giant evil corporation. But we're one of the few independent studios that's not owned by the 26% of Hollywood that you own. So, kind of like, screw you, Mom, we're going home. And the best part about it for me is that everyone who's mad about it is probably the same type of people who were really into Venom. I'm making a broad generalization here.
Maybe a little bit, yeah.
But Venom proves to Sony that they don't need Spider-Man to make a Spider-Man movie, and that they don't need Disney to make a Spider-Man movie because they can do it on their own. They can do it very successfully, regardless of what my opinion or my willingness to see that movie might have been. That movie is objectively incredibly successful. So the whole thing is just completely crazy. And the fact that that people's reading of it is like, oh, you're doing this to hurt me personally because I want Spider-Man to be baby Iron Man. That's just crazy because, firstly, Sony doesn't really own Spider-Man. Disney doesn't really own Spider-Man. None of us own Spider-Man. So
well, and so that's, there's so many different things to take up on this. So I want to come back to copyright here just a little bit. But what's really interesting is if you go back to the press that was going on before Spider-Man Far From Home launched, everyone, and I'm pretty sure even Kevin Feige, or Feige, how do you say his name, Ashley?
I believe it's Feige, but I've never met the man, so I can't officially confirm.
So this was before the movie launched, before we even saw it in the theaters, and everyone was praising all the work that Amy Pascal did producing this movie. She's the co-producer, and everyone's like, oh, yes, I'm just Kevin Feige, but Amy Pascal did all the work. She works for Sony. If she did all the work for it, that kind of nullifies any argument that Marvel/Disney would have on saying, well, if we can't get this working out, then Kevin is not available to help co-produce your movie, and therefore it will be a failure. And it's like, but you guys just said she did all the work and she made Spider-Man Far From Home what it was.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also, God forbid we gave a woman any credit.
Well, and I think that's probably some of the backlash I saw today with some people going, oh, she just ruined the movie and ruined the franchise. It's like, no, she didn't. She was in the first movie. She was in the second movie. So knock it off.
Yeah. It's all a little frustrating because it's something that, even with what we're getting from Deadline and Hollywood Reporter, like, we barely have an understanding of what is happening. And so a lot of people are weighing in who are unfamiliar with how it works, which is fine. I weigh in on I don't know how space works, and I have lots of opinions about NASA. I'm not saying that people can't have opinions, but I do encourage people, if you are feeling hurt and moved by this, to really, really do some research as to what was asked for, what this means. And then I would recommend people check out Stan Lee's children and Stan Lee's estate gave a big statement about their opinions, and they're siding with Sony. I'm not saying that anyone has to side with Sony. It is your opinion. You do whatever you want. But again, I would recommend that they check out these official statements because people have some really interesting, thoughtful things to say. Yeah,
and I haven't even seen one single source that has what the terms of the deal is because we don't know. Of course, we're going everything sourced, originated from Deadline, and then everyone spun off from that. And I've got some feelings on this. The first one is that the press is being manipulated. The entertainment press is being manipulated by either one or both of these corporations to fight their war as a proxy in the press, in the public.
Yeah.
And, let the press run with all this stuff going, oh, we got all these exclusives. Chaos. This is going to be wonderful for our hits, for our clicks, for our readership. And it's just Disney and Sony fighting with one another, seeing who they can get the public riled up at the most in hopes that the other will cave to get the better deal. So that's the one thing that is most interesting to me. The other thing is, Sony still has the rights to Spider-Man. So Spider-Man isn't losing anything. They're still paying for it. They still have these agreements down. And regardless, Sony will still have to get Marvel approval for whatever they do with Spider-Man. That's just, one of the licensing things that goes with this. Yeah. And then, quite honestly, the way the second Spider-Man film ended, I would think that you would want to keep the third Spider-Man film as small and as close to home as you would want to because of the nature of the end of that movie. And you could make it a very small personal thing without getting Happy or without getting Nick Fury or without getting Captain Marvel involved in this movie.
Well, and everyone can have their opinions on which of the movies they liked and stuff like that. But one of the things that we haven't seen from this new era of Spider-Man is we haven't seen the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and that might be really fun to see explored, especially as Tom Holland is getting older and Peter Parker's getting older by association. Maybe he learns that staying close to home is what's right for him. Yep, and considering Spidey lives in Queens his whole life, I think that would make a lot of sense.
I think that would make a lot of sense. I think that would make a whole lot of sense. So we'll see what happens on this. D23 is currently going on in California. We got word of The Mandalorian today. From the Star Wars and the Disney Plus service getting ready to launch in November when the Mandalorian will arrive. I haven't seen any signups. I haven't seen the Mandalorian trailer. That will come, but it wouldn't surprise me, Ashley, if before the end of the weekend we see some more news on this front, maybe by Monday next week.
I certainly hope so. I know a bunch of people were probably expecting something about it on Did You Hear? I didn't feel comfortable putting up the not official trailer that people can't find.
Right.
You can't find it filmed on someone's phone. If you can't wait, I understand. But The Mandalorian, man, is a very exciting opportunity. I hope it goes.
Yeah, me too.
Great.
Me too. So let's swing back around really quick and talk about copyright. The interesting thing about this is if Disney had not been messing around with the copyright laws in the 1970s with the Sonny Bono Copyright Act.
That's the funniest part. That is the funniest part.
So Mickey Mouse and pretty much everything that Disney had created would be in the public domain. And prior to the Sonny Bono Act, copyright extended for the life of the creator plus 25 years.
Yeah.
So in some cases, depending on who you're going to credit as a creator, yes, Stan Lee could have still owned the copyright to Spider-Man, but more than likely, Spider-Man could have easily fallen into public domain right now, in which case everyone could do whatever they want with that. And Disney wouldn't have any say on this.
Yeah, that to me is the most ironic thing, is that this is happening the way it is happening because Disney was so desperate to hold on to the Mickey Mouse copyright. And then WB certainly should not escape
no.
criticism for their treatment of Superman and their Trinity characters, which were sort of wrapped up under that same thing. But this literally wouldn't be happening if Disney hadn't changed the law, which to me, for everyone siding with Disney, is also like sort of a deep irony.
Yeah, no, now, kind of keep in mind, I am a big supporter of let things pass into the public domain. Pretty much, Disney made its vast fortune off the animated movies from public domain material that they just created their own stories off of until they would go and buy things like the rights.
Aladdin is not an original Disney concept.
No, it's a public domain. I mean, that goes back to Aladdin and the 40 Thieves and Scheherazade and 1001 Nights, and The Little Mermaid goes all the way back to what's his name? There in the
Christian Andersen.
Yeah, Hans Christian Andersen, and that was already in public domain. In the case of Peter Pan, that was something that they did license. In the case of Mary Poppins, that is something that they did license. In the case of Alice in Wonderland, I'm pretty sure that was in. I don't know if that was in public domain yet or not, or if they were licensing it through the Carroll estate, but most of the Disney stuff, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, all that stuff, public domain material. that they just culled and used for their own works. And so part of me is like, yeah, I can see copyright expiring. But on the other hand, I kind of, and I want to say, I am fully in support of things going into the public domain. However, in some cases, I don't think I want to see Mickey Mouse shooting heroin or being in a Fritz the Cat movie because Mickey Mouse went into public domain. Likewise, I think that harms the character overall. At the same time, I don't think Disney should go litigate and sue a child care place because somebody painted Mickey Mouse on the wall to make it a friendlier place for kids. So I'm kind of in the two minds. On the one hand, I kind of sympathize with these corporations that have an IP that they would like to keep quote unquote wholesome or keep control of what people are doing with that. On the other hand, I kind of would rather some of this stuff be in public domain so anyone could use it however they see fit. The benefit, though, Ashley, is if Spider-Man, if Mickey Mouse, if all of this goes into public domain, then nobody's going to make any $1 billion off of a movie on it.
That's true. And that's, I think, ultimately what the bottom line comes down to.
And that means that in order to make $1 billion movie, you better create new stuff.
Yeah.
So that it's under your copyright and under your protection and not just go back and say, hey, we've got the rights to Aladdin because we made the Aladdin movie. Let's make a live action or let's make a live action or a CGI Lion King. Let's remake everything. And the remake culture is really all about a fear of not trying something new and relying on things that have worked in the past.
Yeah, and it's hard to argue with the box office.
Yeah.
Because it is so successful. And even though I feel deeply frustrated by the fact that this is what is happening, evidently not everyone else does. So I think it's setting a bad precedent. And I think the fact that this is how certain fans are engaging is also just backing up that same bad precedent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally do.
And how this all shakes out is going to be really, really interesting because Disney does own so much of the market share. So whatever they do, everyone else will ultimately be copying down the line. We've already seen that. So, I mean, if everyone is hoping, right, that Sony's going to cave by the end of D23.
Right.
If Sony does cave for whatever reason, I think it's all over, man.
It really is. And I wanted to point this up. I think your audio is still live, Ashley.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it is. But here's a graphic that's available on the web. Just go and look for what does Disney own. Now, this is before the Fox acquisition. And this gives you a breakdown of everything that Disney owned prior to the Fox merger, including Marvel Entertainment, Marvel Studios, Lucasfilm, the Walt Disney Studios. Oh, this one does include the 20th Century Fox Group and everything that is in part of that. National Geographic Partners, Disney Music Group, Disney Theatrical Group, Disney ABC Television Group, ESPN, Disney Studio Services. What else is all this stuff over here? Ready Creek Improvement, that's part of the Buena Vista Power Plant Corporation there. Steamboat Ventures, Disney Direct-to-Consumer International, including Hulu and all of these other things. I mean, when you look at this graphic, it is so deep and so dense, and Disney owns, as you said, 26% of Hollywood right now and the entertainment industry. And with the launch of with the launch of Disney Plus, with them bringing everything under that streaming umbrella and taking it away from other services or moving certain risque stuff over to Hulu and more family-friendly stuff under the Disney Plus service. This is a big multi-headed, lack of a better word, a hydra.
Totally.
that is something that we should be concerned about. And as you said, we shouldn't probably cry for Sony Entertainment because Sony is also a giant machine, that owns so much. But at the same time, I think that it's important that we let a company like Sony do what they need to do, to let Warner Brothers do what they need to do. I'm not really overly thrilled with the AT&T purchase of Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
But I think we need to let these companies do what they need to do. And you're right. If Sony does cave, I think you're right. It is going to be kind of all over for Sony.
Well, and let's not forget that the greatest Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, was made only by Sony and utterly independent of Disney.
Right. And it is the greatest Spider-Man movie of all times. And if you don't believe me, sit down and watch it. And if you still don't believe me, watch it again. And if you still don't believe me, then there's something wrong with you.
Oh, I'll fight anyone who doesn't think that is a scientific fact.
Let's see. In the chat, we have Wayward Boy saying Alice in Wonderland is public domain. Lewis Carroll died in 1898. It should be since the late 1970s in any case. And I think that's correct because the Sonny Bono Copyright Act only went back to stuff to 1923. So anything before 1923 should be in the public domain unless there was something in place to keep that copyright alive. For example, I think Sherlock Holmes in some places is still copyright.
That actually changed a couple years ago. It is fully in the public domain because of a lawsuit. Actually, the United States was one of the last holdouts on that.
Okay. Malone says, how about using billions of supporting new talented people instead of leeching 80-year-old characters and skewing laws to your advantage?
I mean, preach.
That's what it kind of boils down to, right? Where is creativity? And maybe this is something we might want to continue next week, but I'll kind of posit this theory out here for people right now. We are afraid as a society, as individuals, as people, we are fragile egos. We have very fragile egos. And we are afraid of failure, right? We are afraid of the girl turning us down, laughing at our face when we ask her out for the date, or the guy sneering at us when we tell him that we like him, or laughing in our face for that. We are afraid of creating something for fear of, especially in this internet toxic age, of people jumping all over us and telling us that we aren't worthy. So imagine if you're a mega corporation and you put out something that isn't good. Imagine the fears of Disney having flashbacks to The Black Cauldron. I'm not saying it's one of the worst movies ever made from the animated studios, but of all the animated movies that it has made, it is considered one of the worst. It does have some bad story elements into it. It was probably a bad adaptation to begin with, but for dark animation, wow, it's really cool. And from the animation side, it's really cool. But for Disney, that is seen as one of their biggest failures. And for the Disney animation, I'm sure that continues to haunt them in many, many ways. So for Disney to fear screwing up on something and having the world lash out at them is probably one of the reasons why they, more often than not, are afraid of doing something new. We have already heard that Disney has said with this Fox acquisition that they're not really interested in pursuing a lot of projects. They're only interested right now from Fox pursuing the Planet of the Apes franchise and pursuing the Avatar franchise because they have a huge park in Florida that has a lot of Avatar surrounding it. So Disney right now, they just need to keep repeating what they're doing. This is why we get Sleeping Beauty and not Sleeping Beauty, but Beauty and the Beast, and why we get Aladdin, and why we're getting The Lion King. It's because they're, I think, afraid to try something new for fear of losing money on the deal or looking bad or just someone going, well, this isn't the Disney I remember.
Yeah, and you know what? Things change. Disney also had really questionable propaganda. So it's okay for it not to be the Disney you remember. And that doesn't take anything away from anyone else. It's okay for it not to be the Spider-Man you remembered. And maybe you'll find yourself pleasantly surprised, like I think a lot of us have over the years with various adaptations. And maybe you'll get something even better. You know, dare to look at something else. I don't know, man.
Or at least try something new. I mean, the situation right now with Spider-Man. Remember, Spider-Man has been around since, 1998 or something like that, with that first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
Something like that, yeah.
So it's been around for a long time. Spider-Man was around before the Iron Man movie. The only reason why we're in this situation right now is because Jon Favreau had the nerve to go up to Marvel when they were at one of their lowest points and saying, give me a chance to try something with this Iron Man property, and let's just see what happens. And because of the resounding success of his work, the entire MCU was born. And the entire problem that we had was born because somebody was daring to try something new. Remember when what's his name from Ant-Man was fired.
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright, when he was fired, because he wanted to make something light-hearted and humorous. And they were like, oh, no, we can't try anything different because that's not going to work. That's not in our big picture. And then they did Thor Ragnarok, and they said, oh, wait. Or they did, not Thor Ragnarok, they did Guardians of the Galaxy. And everyone's like, oh, you can do something that is light-humored.
Yeah.
You can do something that's light and fun. Oh, okay, now we get it. But they're afraid to deviate from that. And a lot of what's going on in the Marvel universe right now is locked in because I think they're afraid of doing something new.
Well, they are because they're Disney.
Well, yeah.
And, the question is, how much longer are we going to let them not get away with it? But, I mean, if people keep paying for it, then nothing is going to change. And if people keep shooting down all of their competition, then the creativity is going to be lost. That's what we love about Guardians of the Galaxy. That's what we love about Spider-Verse, is they're new and they're different and they're creative. And I know we want all of the toys in the same toy box, but that's just not always the answer.
Yeah, and it's not always going to be the ultimate solution. So with whatever decision, however this goes down, I think everyone in the long run will be fine. At the very least, you have two fantastic Spider-Man movies. You have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and you have Spider-Man Homecoming. You have two fantastic movies that you can go back and watch again and again and again and again and just love and marvel at everything that went into those two films. And you could die an old man or a young person and rest happy knowing that those two films graced your lives. And if you've never seen a good Spider-Man film ever again, you still have those two.
There you go.
Ashley, you want to say anything else before we get out of here this week? I know we kind of stuck a little bit too long maybe on the Disney Spider-Man thing, but again, I would do what Ashley says and go out and do some source material, and if you have some thoughts, share them. But I don't think Disney and I don't think Sony are the villains here. I think there's maybe Disney may be more onto the horns cropping up than maybe Sony. But I think, go ahead.
Ultimately, like, no one is there looking out for any of our fan needs. They're all there looking for the bottom dollar. So
it's called show business for a reason.
Don't kid yourself that anyone is on your side or anyone has our best interest in mind. So, listen to what pundits that you trust have to say. Check out their articles. Read as much as you can. Make an informed opinion. But don't, whatever side you come down on, there's no need to be mad about it because we're still getting more Spider-Man movies. So ultimately, we all win.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Thank you very much, Ashley Victoria Robinson. Where can people find you on the lines?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V. Robinson. The V is very important. You can pre-order my second graphic novel, Science, if you go to sciencecomicbook.com. And if you are a comic book professional, please vote for Jupiter Jet in the Ringo Awards.
Oh,
it is
yes.
nominated for Best Kids Comic.
That is fantastic. Congratulations to you and Jason on that. I hope that you guys win all the awards.
Me too.
All right, dear listeners, we will be back next Friday. I think we're going into Labor Day weekend next weekend, but we will be back next Friday to talk with you some more. Maybe we'll continue to talk about this creative venture and the creative outlet and why it's okay to try something new. And we'll continue that maybe for a couple of weeks and see how that discussion goes. Podcast at majorspoilers.com if you have any questions. All the social stuffs are right up there. Just feel free to link and follow along, and we will talk with you very soon. Maybe I should click the right button and get us all out of here. Woohoo!
That's fun.
All right, I should have you. Whoops, I got to... Suddenly everything gets loud. It's because I disconnected a Skype call. I have no idea. We had such horrible, horrible problems this week with technology. Also, I don't know if we're going to have a live stream this weekend. Keep watching the Twitter the Twitter feed at Major Spoilers, and I'll let you know if we're doing a game stream tomorrow night. I have a family thing to do tomorrow. And I probably won't be home until later. But just keep your eyes on the skies. Oh, there goes Frosty Bite. And Hyperlexic. And Jackie K. And Jimmy Dunn and Joel. Wayward Boy, is this your first week on the show? Geek Jock, hey man, hope you have a great weekend. We'll get these bugs knocked out next week. I have no idea why suddenly it wouldn't capture a window like it's supposed to. So dumb. Captured every other window that was active. Let's see, who is GM Trigan? Genie Trigan. Or maybe it's GM Etrigan. Hey, thanks for checking in. Hey, there's Brad. I think I don't think the third movie is going to need Doctor Strange. I think it needs Mephisto. Oh, hey, look, the show's already done and it's still talking. Anyway, you guys have a great week. Bye now.